Hey there, everyone. Just getting things rolling here on our digital set, digital studio. Wanted to give you the lay of the land and what we are expecting to see when it comes to this severe weather event, this severe weather potential here this evening. So we are going to get jumping right into it. We do have a storm ready alert day that is for 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. So not technically the day, but we are talking about severe storms that will affect portion of our Thursday, late Thursday into early Friday. 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. is when you're going to be needing those warnings to wake you up potentially if you are going to sleep before that point in time. I want to show you where the storms are right now. My apologies, I just had to click over to a different screen. But here are where the storms are currently. They're on the Illinois-Wisconsin border. That's the one, that's the area that growth that is just to the north of Chicago that we are going to be watching out for our severe weather risks. So these storms are likely going to start to pile on up on top of each other, become a line of storms that are eventually going to race across the Lake Michigan area and eventually get into the west side of the state, becoming our severe weather risk as we go later on into tonight and for the start of the early morning hours of our Friday. They have a ton of warnings and also some tornado watches. The yellow is that tornado watch box. The warnings in orange and also red, those are our severe thunderstorm warnings in orange and tornado warnings in red. What we're likely going to see is mainly severe thunderstorm warnings. Could be a tornado warning or two, but overall, we are going to be just talking about a wind and hail threat with a very small chance at a tornado. We'll show you that risk assessment. So we do have a few areas, including Owasso, Alma, and Mount Pleasant in that enhanced risk, that numerous category, level 3 out of 5 on our severe weather threats. Most of the area, though, is in the scattered slight risk, level 2 out of 5, so a little bit lower as you get further to the north and to the east. But I would say that those across US 127, Interstate 69, but especially if you live along and west of Interstate 75, you have the greatest potential, greatest risk of severe weather here this evening. Something we are going to definitely keep watching just to see how those storms start to pop up, what's going to give them support and energy as they move across the lake and get into the state of Michigan, and how long they last. You know, they could end up weakening as they get closer and closer, as we will start to lose some of that heat and humidity that would support this overall risk. So we are talking about things quiet through about 10 o'clock, 9 p.m. It's over towards Grand Rapids. So really not an issue for us at that point in time. Towards 10 o'clock, it's approaching US 127, but still not there just yet. So in between 10 and 11 o'clock, if you live towards Clare, Mount Pleasant, Alma, in and around US 127, 10 to 11 o'clock is when these storms will be moving on in for you. Then they could start to speed up. If we start to see a bow, so that backward C, which would indicate a push of potentially some damaging winds, and also a forward speed that starts to increase with these storms, could start to pick up some speed, which would give us an increased risk at damaging winds, but also that large hail and isolated tornado threat. So towards 11 p.m., it's going to be approaching Interstate 75, not in that corridor just yet, but if you live Saginaw Bay City, Midland, up towards West Branch, it's 11 o'clock to midnight that time frame will be for your worst conditions and the worst of the severe storms. By midnight, it's pretty much across all of Genesee County, getting into the thumb, slightly east of Interstate 75, so towards Caro, just outside of Indian Fields, just outside of Lapeer, we are going to see those storms right in that vicinity, with it moving through the thumb between about 1 and 2 a.m. Once we get towards about 2, 3 o'clock, those storms will be off and over Lake Huron, no longer a risk for us, and we are quiet for the rest of the overnight. Getting into the start of the day and most of the day on Friday, we do have a risk of marginally severe weather, maybe some stronger storms late Friday into Saturday, but nothing quite like our risk here for the rest of tonight. So I want to show you this once again. Our severe weather threats, main risk is going to be damaging winds, scattered large hail. Hail might actually be the 1A or 1B to the damaging winds 1A. So we may see quite a bit of large hail, quarter, maybe even ping pong golf ball sized hail is a possibility, especially the further west that you live. So over towards Alma, Mount Pleasant, Hatton, Clare, Owasso, Chesaning, Midland, Gladwin, you guys may have a little bit higher of a risk compared to those that are further off to the east and to the north. So closer to Lake Huron, getting into the thumb, it will be later in the overnight. We'll have less of that heat. Some of the cooler air coming off of Lake Huron, Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie will also be moving into these areas. So more 60s as opposed to 70s. If we had an area-wide 70-degree temperature, we may have been talking about a higher end risk, but we're going to be cooling things down once we get past sunset, which is going to likely aid in the weakening trend and overall weakening progression of these storms. I'm going to check out our comments. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, you can absolutely leave them in the comments below. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows what is going on when we are talking about this severe weather risk. I'm going to show you guys once again that radar and kind of give you an idea of where things are and where things stand right now. You can see some of these storms, in a way, they're not as severe as what we thought they might be here into northern Illinois. It's really as you go up into Wisconsin that things are really starting to get going towards Milwaukee. That's some pretty significant stuff. That's a lot of hail. That's a lot of wind. And this is the area that could potentially become that bow, that line of storms that eventually races across Lake Michigan, gets into the western side of the state, so towards Grand Rapids by about 9 o'clock, and then eventually getting towards US 127, Interstate 69, and also Interstate 75 as we get closer to 11 o'clock midnight time frame. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this, show you where things are as they stand right now. So this is the current radar that we are going to be talking about. And I'm going to put a track on this for you guys. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is I'm going to get an idea of how fast these storms are moving right now out there in Wisconsin and also Illinois. And then I can get a better idea of how quickly they will move into our area as well. But a lot of these storms are severe warned, mainly just large hail and damaging winds. That's the threat that we have currently. So the severe thunderstorm warning, that's for golf ball size hail, 60 mile per hour winds for them. And they say it's nearly stationary. So I'm going to get a better idea. What I'm going to do is probably put it at about 40 miles per hour. I think that would give us a good ballpark estimate of how quickly these storms will eventually get, because they may not be moving all that quickly right now, but they will pick up some speed. So let's go east to west. Maybe a little bit too slow. So we're going to go 45 miles per hour. Because eventually these storms will start to pick up their speed as they move off to the east. So towards Grand Rapids by about 10:30, I would say. Lansing, 11:30. Flint, 12:30. And then over towards Lake Huron by about 2 o'clock. So that's kind of a ballpark estimate for the time frame that we are going to be seeing these storms moving on in as they start to pick up some speed where they are currently at right now. Because a lot of these severe thunderstorm warnings are for 35 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour, and also 25. So some of these storms are moving faster than others, but a general idea of how quickly these storms are moving is about 45 miles per hour currently, just kind of doing the numbers in my head. Yeah, about 45 miles per hour. So that's a good estimate about how quickly these storms will move on in. Once we get towards about 10, 11 o'clock, we'll of course be on air, but we're going to jump back here on Facebook and kind of show you exactly what is going to be happening when it comes to our severe weather risk. So what I'm hoping for is that we're able to jump on our StreamYard here and Facebook and YouTube and kind of give you a better idea of what's happening towards 11 o'clock, more so 10, 11 o'clock, US 127. Before I go, because again, we've got at least 3 more hours before these storms really start to make their way on in for us. I'm going to give you another look at the timing, but I'm going to show you the latest high resolution refresh model. So this is a model that updates every hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to its latest run, and let's see what time frame it kind of gives us for a few of these storms. So if you bear with me, I'll get this up and running. So there's our futurecast at about 7:30 where we are right now. It has those storms a little bit slower. So potentially towards Grand Rapids on Lake Michigan shoreline by about 10 p.m. So that's a bit slower than what we were thinking a little bit ago. 11 p.m. it's up towards Cadillac, now moving in towards Lansing. So that 11 o'clock time frame is when we're likely going to be seeing US 127. So towards Mount Pleasant, getting into Alma, Clare, up towards Houghton Lake. Those communities, your cities, and those counties on US 127, right around US 127. It's around 11 o'clock that you'll need to be weather aware, making sure you get those warnings sent to you so that they can wake you up and potentially save your life if we do have any tornado warnings or severe thunderstorm warnings. So right around midnight, we've got some storms now entering the picture towards Flint, getting up to Midland, potentially just outside of Saginaw, Owasso in that area, maybe as far to the west as Standish and also West Branch. Once we get towards 1 o'clock, it has passed through Flint, now making its way into the Thumb, up towards and outside of West Branch at that point, getting up towards Tawas City, Oscoda, between 1 to 2, maybe even 2 to 3, closer to Lake Huron shoreline, and then in through the Thumb. By 2 o'clock, you can see those storms are pretty much right there on the lakeshore. It speeds up very quickly. So we go from right here at midnight to 2 a.m., and it pretty much clears the entire area. So 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., maybe 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. is when we've got the bulk of the activity. But 10 o'clock, if things speed up a little bit more, is when we are going to be watching out for maybe some storms on our western counties, western communities, eventually getting through the area. So you can see 11 p.m. approaching US 127, midnight into US 127 and approaching Interstate 75. By 1 o'clock, we've got it into Interstate 75 and making its way into the Thumb. 2 o'clock, right along the lakeshore of Lake Huron, moving away from the Saginaw Bay. 3 o'clock, the entire area is clear. And you can see these are some pretty intense cells. Whenever you get the darker red, the pink, especially the lighter pink, that's a lot of heavy rain, but also the potential of some hail and some damaging winds. And if we do have any rotation in any of these cells, that would, of course, become a tornado risk. So that's what we're going to be watching out for very closely here tonight. This, again, are severe weather threats from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. We've got that isolated tornado potential. Main threat will be damaging winds, scattered large hail, potentially upwards of ping pong to golf ball size. And one thing that is unlikely is the flood risk with these storms. Jeff, it is still expected to move quickly. Kent County, probably closer to about 10 p.m. for you for these storms as they currently stand right now, because on our Doppler radar, they're still on the western shores of Lake Michigan. It may take an hour to an hour and a half to make it towards you. So I would say 9:30, 10 o'clock for you, Jeff, in Kent County is when you can expect some of these storms. But you can see they're already growing pretty significantly. They're becoming a line, which is what would give us a higher damaging wind threat. So something that we are definitely going to keep an eye on and watch out for. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to pull up the Storm Prediction Center and see if they have any discussion about. So what is likely going to occur is, and I'm going to actually share this screen. All right, folks. So you've got me on both sides of the screen, including the radar. And what we are seeing here, and I'm going to zoom in just so you guys can see it a little bit better. So this is a mesoscale discussion. You can see it's highlighting pretty much the entire western and central portion of the Lower Peninsula. So this is a tornado watch box that is likely going to be issued for South Bend, Kalamazoo, Holland, Grand Rapids, Lansing, over towards Jackson, maybe even including some of our western suburbs across US 127. You could be put under a tornado watch box here momentarily, and I'll show you what their discussion is. So they are watching that band of broken severe storms, which we showed you on radar, including several supercells. So those are the individual cells that have some rotation involved. Those are the ones that likely will produce most of the tornadoes if we see any of them. But there could be some embedded spin in a line of storms. That's also a possibility. All hazards, meaning damaging winds, large hail, and also tornadoes are possible with any storm that moves across the state of Michigan. So they are saying that there's a lot of instability, which is that storm energy. So when we talk about the storm energy, it's about how much rising motion is in the air. That's the instability, how much rising motion to sustain these storms and what they can feed off of to continue their progression across the state. So they are expecting to issue a watch box probably before 9 o'clock. So I would say by 9 p.m. we'll likely have a tornado watch across the western side of the state, maybe even including our western suburbs. You can see some of the storm reports. Lots of hail. Any of those green dots, that's hail. And there are some triangles, which is that large hail. So 2 inches plus in diameter happening there. All right. So we're going to go back to the radar. And I'll show you what's going on. Again, these storms are pretty much lining themselves up here across Wisconsin, Illinois. And they will continue to work their way on off to the east. Well, that didn't work out. My apologies. That is not the tool, or at least not what should happen with that tool. But so these cells are going to continue their east progression. They may have a little bit of a southeast dive, but overall they'll continue off to the east pretty quickly, 45, 50 miles per hour. So as quickly as they move in, they'll also move on out, but that quick progression can also lead to some of that damaging wind potential. Lacey, will Potterville see any of this? Yes. So Potterville is in this risk. You likely have a higher risk in your location since you are in that enhanced category, level 3 out of 5. So Potterville, likely going to be closer to midnight, potentially. I'm going to try and get this off. So we're going to go back to our model. So Potterville, you can see closer to midnight, most likely for those storms. Jessica, Jackson, and if I can get this up, I'm going to pull this back up. We're going to stop it right at midnight so that I can move the map. So Jackson, probably closer, and you can see as we step through, maybe like 1 o'clock for you with these storms. And for Flint, also between midnight and 1 o'clock. Jamie, for you in Freeland, so let's step back a little bit. So right at midnight, you can see these storms probably approaching your area. So I would say 11:30 to 12:30 for you. Linda, for Owasso, it's probably going to be in that same ballpark, 11:30 to 12:30. Mount Pleasant, a little bit earlier. I would say more so on the order of 10:30 to 11:30. Tawa City, and we will move things forward. So I'm going to go back to this map. We're going to get ourselves to 3 a.m. And for you up in Tawa City, it's likely going to be 1:30 to 2:30 for you. Saginaw looking closer to between midnight and 1 o'clock. For Grand Blanc, also, I would say midnight, 1 o'clock, maybe 12:30 to 1:30. For Gratiot, Sierra, it's likely going to be closer to about midnight. So I would say 11:30 to 12:30 for you. Sierra, we are also expecting some pretty significant wind, large hail. So if you guys have cars that you can put in the garage, or if you have a garage that you can put your car in, I would recommend doing so just because of the hail risk that we do have. We are expecting the potential of some damaging hail along with damaging winds and also the possibility of an isolated tornado. Robin, so I don't expect this to be classified as a derecho because it's not going to be the length that you would need for one to technically be termed a derecho, but a damaging line of storms for sure with those damaging winds. So I'm going to step through this timing once more. So by about 10 p.m., I would say it's going to be for sure on the lake shore of Lake Michigan. Chad and Mackenzie, thank you guys for watching. Hello as well. We're going to start with the timing of these storms. So right around 10 o'clock, they'll be across Lake Michigan shoreline, likely closer to US 131, so Grand Rapids towards Muskegon, that area. Once we get towards 11 o'clock, they will have jumped closer to US 127, so likely approaching Mount Pleasant, Alma, getting up towards Clare, Hatton. You folks across US 127, it's likely going to be in between about 11 p.m. and midnight for your severe weather risk. Once we get towards midnight, these storms will really start to pick up their speed. So between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., they are going to race across our area. They're going to get some backing from some stronger winds up in the atmosphere, and they're also going to push themselves along a little bit further once we get these lines of storms to really stack up and move themselves across the area. So by midnight, could have a couple storms towards Interstate 75, but overall, these storms are going to be approaching I-75. 1 o'clock, they will be through the interstate, getting into the thumb, and also mainly to the east of Interstate 75, even as you go north of the Saginaw Bay. By 2 a.m., we are going to see these storms pretty much right along Lake Huron shoreline and then away from the area by 3 o'clock. Southgate, you are likely going to see some of these storms, I would say, probably closer to about 2 a.m. Now, there is the potential that you are capped, so you see these storms not really able to form or sustain themselves. So you may eventually get out of that realm of possibility of the worst of the storms. It's as you head further to the north here in our area that we don't necessarily have that cap, so we're kind of hoping that some of the cooler air mitigates the risk overall of these storms. But as of right now, I would say your threat is probably closer to 2 a.m. down in Southgate. Here's our threats once again. This will likely be updated as we go to about 9 o'clock. I don't anticipate too many changes. I think most of us will stay in this slight risk scattered level 2 out of 5. But 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., that's the time frame that we need to be weather aware for these storms. Michael, for Alpena and Traverse City. So you can see Traverse City, Alpena. I'm going to actually no, can't do that. But Traverse City, I would say between 11 and midnight for up towards Traverse City. But as you go further to the north, less of a severe weather risk, but still an opportunity at maybe some damaging winds. And then up towards Alpena between about 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So both cities will be involved just at different times. And I'm still watching out for the possibility of this tornado watch to be issued. I would say before 9 o'clock is when that tornado watch will be in place. If there are any other questions, happy to answer them. All of us have a risk of damaging winds and large hail with an isolated tornado. Most of us will not have any worries or concerns about a tornado. It'll be the damaging winds up to 60, maybe 70 miles per hour, and the large hail up to quarter size for sure, but maybe some ping pong golf ball size at the largest with some of these cells. So definitely not the softball, baseball size hail that we saw a couple of years ago in Davison, but still some hail that can do some damage, leave some dings or marks in your car. So hopefully, if you have a garage, I would put the car in the garage tonight. All right, one more check of radar, and then I'm going to wrap things up. Of course, as these storms start to make their approach and get into our area, I will make sure that we are back here on Facebook and also YouTube. But as of right now, we are talking about these significant severe thunderstorms towards Milwaukee, Sheboygan, and this is eventually going to race across the Great Lakes, likely getting to the Lake Michigan shoreline on the Michigan side by about 9, 10 o'clock, and then progressing through our area between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. Alex, hello. For driving to Detroit around midnight, I would likely leave earlier if you can. If you can leave around 11 o'clock or maybe even 11:30, I would recommend it. The closer you get to midnight and 12:30, the more likely you're going to run into these storms and have some serious problems with the winds and the hail. So if you can leave a bit earlier, maybe 11, 11:30, I would say that would probably be beneficial for you to get down to Detroit. Sherry, for Shiawassee County, Owasso, it's likely going to be closer to about midnight that you see these storms. I would say between 11:30 and 12:30 that we have the worst of the conditions for you. Damaging winds, large hail would be the main threats there. But you can see these storms really lightening up the radar. There's probably several hundred lightning strikes in these storms alone. So very energetic storms that will come through as well. Our nighttime sky will be lit up. Lots of flashing from these lightning strikes. And lightning can be just as dangerous if you're caught outside, just as the damaging winds and large hail and even that tornado risk. Donna, for Genesee County, probably closer to midnight is what the time frame we're looking at. Same thing for you, Terry, and Saginaw, closer to midnight for those storms. And everyone has the risk of damaging winds, large hail with any of these cells. Sally, for Northern Bay County, it's probably between midnight and 1 o'clock for you for the time of these storms. Damaging winds, large hail. All right, everyone, I'm going to end the stream, but we will be back on Facebook and YouTube when these storms really start to make their approach towards US 127, and we'll continue with that live stream as long as we have warnings. If there are no warnings, we'll hop off and we'll take a break. But as long as there is warnings out there, Ashley, for Grand Blanc, we are talking about probably closer to about midnight. 12 to 1, I would say, is the time frame for you. Damaging winds, large hail, isolated tornado. Mike, is Genesee County in the significant tornado potential like Southwest Michigan? No, we are not, but doesn't mean we can't experience a tornado here. We may not have the ingredients necessary for a significant one or a strong tornado, but a weak or brief tornado is a possibility. You know, we could get winds 80 to 100 miles per hour in some of these tornadoes. Doesn't necessarily classify it as a strong tornado, but it does a lot of damage. So we have the tornado risk, yes, but it is lower than what is happening across southwestern lower Michigan. We are still in the risk, though, of an isolated tornado, so don't let your guard down, even though our risk is a little bit lower than folks out to the west. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for me here on this Facebook and YouTube update. We will have more as we get closer, likely closer to about 10, 11 o'clock. We'll get back up here on Facebook and YouTube, and we will be giving you more information about current warnings at that point. Right now, it's just a waiting game. See how quickly these storms move across the lake and how quickly they get into our area as well. So we are going to watch these very closely. And any of those warnings that are issued, watch out for the watch box, because there will likely be a tornado watch issued by the top of the hour, probably for US 127. So I would say Gratiot, Isabella, and Clare counties will likely be included in that tornado watch, and maybe up towards Roscommon County. We'll see what counties and communities they include from our area, but it likely will be US 127 that sees that tornado watch box. Doesn't mean everyone else won't get into a watch eventually, but we would likely see that extended for the rest of us as we start to get some warnings closer to the area. So if you're not put under a watch just yet, doesn't mean your severe weather risk is gone. It just means that watch area is for the next couple of hours. And as these storms move across the state, as they get closer to about 10, 11 o'clock, will likely all be included in either a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch. But that watch is just the conditions are ripe and ready for the potential of damaging winds, large hail, and an isolated tornado. It's the warnings that you really need to take seriously. If you get under a severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning, make sure you're going into that shelter, that lowest interior room, especially for a tornado warning. A severe thunderstorm warning is more going to be along the lines, damaging winds, large hail. So you want to stay away from any of those windows, exterior walls, just in case we have damage that brings a tree limb or a tree down, or we have some power lines that go down, some damage on those exterior walls, or even on that higher level of your home. So if you are put under a warning, make sure you take that seriously. I know these storms are going to be coming in when a lot of us are probably asleep. So keep your phone on loud volume. If a warning is issued for you, want to make sure you take that seriously, get into that lower interior room, preferably a basement, let those storms pass. Hopefully you don't have any damage in your community or, neighborhood, or even just your home. We just want to keep you safe. That's our main goal, main thing here with these storms coming so late. We want to keep you safe and informed. So any warnings that are issued, make sure you have an app that can wake you up. If a tornado warning is issued, your phone will automatically have that warning for you. If a severe thunderstorm is issued, it'll really just be your weather radio or our StormReady weather app that will get you the latest and greatest information to wake you up and get you the lay of the land, and potentially wake you up in enough time to get you into that StormReady shelter. So everyone stay safe. We'll be back here probably in a couple hours on our Facebook and YouTube channels, and we will have the latest for you on these storms that are pretty significant over towards Wisconsin and over Lake Michigan. They will probably be on the lakeshore by 9 o'clock, towards US 131 by 10, US 127 by 11, midnight for Interstate 75, then into the thumb and east of the Interstate 75 between midnight and 2 a.m. So we'll be back in a couple hours. Watches are to come. We'll likely have a tornado watch for US 127 here by the top of the hour. And, we'll continue to watch those warnings as well.